Meilleurs professionnels de la diasporama mondiale connectés sur notre plateforme. Vous allez pouvoir acquérir des formations adéquates qui feront de vous des entrepreneurs digitaux compétents. Étudiants, entrepreneurs, coachs, instructeurs et entreprises, Diaspo Academy est une opportunité pour vous. Elle vous offre la possibilité de suivre votre formation en mode virtuel à partir de chez vous, où que vous soyez sur la planète. Toutes nos formations disponibles en ligne sont dispensées de manière interactive. Il suffit de vous inscrire et vous pourrez les suivre depuis chez vous. Au cours de la formation, vous passerez des quiz et examens selon votre parcours. En outre, à partir de votre tableau de bord, vous suivrez vos performances et progressions. Vous pourrez aussi communiquer avec vos instructeurs et recevoir des notifications. À la fin de votre parcours de formation, vous recevrez un certificat Diaspo Academy Certified. Que vous soyez débutant ou responsable d'entreprise, Diaspo Academy est une opportunité pour vous. Saisissez-la! Enfin, que vous soyez coach ou instructeur, ayez accès à un millier d'étudiants à travers notre plateforme. Merci de choisir Diaspo Academy, le meilleur choix. Pour plus d'informations, allez sur www.diaspoacademy.com. Diaspo Academy, la plateforme des professionnels du digital.
ESYDA returned to play summer clinics. Recreation, Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Travel team, EDP, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Time, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free mask and water bottle. Register today at esyda.org. Email info@esyda. Phone 248-765-9369. Office 301-800-7848. Toll free 800-995-5532. Free registration for all summer clinics. All new players need buy uniforms. We're following COVID-19 soccer guidelines. Small group practice with 9 players and 1 coach. For more information, go to esyda.org.
L'entrepreneuriat digital vous intéresse-t-il? Vous voulez apprendre à construire des projets digitaux? Aimeriez-vous gagner des revenus passifs conséquents en tout lieu? Voici la plateforme des professionnels du digital, la Diaspo Academy. Ici, vous retrouverez les meilleurs professionnels de la diasporama mondiale connectés sur notre plateforme. Vous allez pouvoir acquérir des formations adéquates qui feront de vous des entrepreneurs digitaux compétents. Étudiants, entrepreneurs, coachs, instructeurs et entreprises, Diaspo Academy est une opportunité pour vous. Elle vous offre la possibilité de suivre votre formation en mode virtuel à partir de chez vous, où que vous soyez sur la planète. Toutes nos formations disponibles en ligne sont dispensées de manière interactive. Il suffit de vous inscrire et vous pourrez les suivre depuis chez vous. Au cours de la formation, vous passerez des quiz et examens selon votre parcours. En outre, à partir de votre tableau de bord, vous suivrez vos performances et progressions. Vous pourrez aussi communiquer avec vos instructeurs et recevoir des notifications. À la fin de votre parcours de formation, vous recevrez un certificat Diaspo Academy Certified. Que vous soyez débutant ou responsable d'entreprise, Diaspo Academy est une opportunité pour vous. Saisissez-la! Enfin, que vous soyez coach ou instructeur, ayez accès à un millier d'étudiants à travers notre plateforme. Merci de choisir Diaspo Academy, le meilleur choix. Pour plus d'informations, allez sur www.diaspoacademy.com. Diaspo Academy, la plateforme des professionnels du digital.
Do you want to promote your business? Do you want to talk about your nonprofit organization? Do you want to talk about your culture? Introducing the online web TV, Africa Today. Fogham, where you can watch us live at the same time on 4 platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and using the Africa Today app. Download our app today for Android or Apple. Promote your business today. For more information, go to www.africtoday.com. Africa Today, the best of digital TV.
show, because we just have our show Fridays. But I said, hello. I want to welcome everyone to the show. This is Dr. Butler, who is live, Dr. Butler, your boy, who is live with you from Africa today. Wonderful. And we have our co-host, who is Brother Z, the Invisible Man.
Yep.
And I want to welcome Minister Salim. And we have two great special guests. We have Kimberly Jones, who's from Atlanta, author, director, and also a screenwriter. And then we have our wonderful trusty, handy, and always available Minister Salim from the Afro Descent Nation. So today we're going to have a great show talking about reparations. And it's really reparations is really prime for today, because celebrating Juneteenth as a day that we're to think about when, we'll go a little bit more in depth into a bit later on, but Juneteenth is a very historical important day to those of us in the African American and African community. And today we are here to talk about what should, what could, and what needs to happen due to what has happened to us in this country. And Juneteenth is something we'll talk a little bit about. But first, we're gonna welcome our guest, Minister Salim. Would you like to say a few words? And then we're gonna go straight into showing the video of just 1 year ago. 1 year ago to date, when they had a hearing on Capitol Hill on reparations. Minister Salim?
I want to thank you, Dr. Butler, for giving us this platform in order to enlighten our people about this most important subject, reparations. I know a lot of people have a lot of different views about it. When I first heard reparations and I heard opposition to it, I couldn't believe it. People were calling it a handout. Reparations has nothing to do with handing out anything other than what's owed to you. And reparations is a payment for wrongs that have been done from one people by another people. And so reparations is most definitely due and owed to us. And we want to talk a little bit about that later in the show.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we're going to go right into showing the video of just 1 year ago to date, when they had the hearing on Capitol Hill about reparations. Video, please.
I sit here as the great-grandson of a former slave, Mary Brown, who was freed by the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1st, 1863. I had the fortune of meeting her as a small child. This hearing is yet another important step in the long and heroic struggle of African Americans to secure reparations for the damages inflicted by enslavement and post-emancipation and racial exclusionary policies.
I am not here in anger or anguish. I am not in any way seeking to encourage hostilities. There are diverse opinions in this room, and I understand it, appreciate it, respect it, admire it, and love it. I'm a product of my history. I am clearly a child that has walked this path. No, I did not pick cotton. But I will say that those who picked cotton created the very basic wealth of this nation. For cotton was king. There was no other product.
Yesterday, when asked about reparations, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell offered a familiar reply. America should not be held liable for something that happened 150 years ago, since none of us currently alive are responsible. Enslavement reigned for 250 years on these shores. When it ended, this country could have extended its hallowed principles, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to all, regardless of color. But America had other principles in mind. And so for a century after the Civil War, Black people were subjected to a relentless campaign of terror, a campaign that extended well into the lifetime of Majority Leader McConnell. We grant that Mr. McConnell was not alive for Appomattox, but he was alive for the electrocution of George Stinney. He was alive for the blinding of Isaac Woodward. What this committee must know is that while emancipation deadbolted the door against the bandits of America, Jim Crow wedged the windows wide open. And that is the thing about Senator McConnell's something. It was 150 years ago, and it was right now.
Black people don't need another apology. We need safer neighborhoods and better schools. We need a less punitive criminal justice system. We need affordable health care. And none of these things can be achieved through reparations for slavery. For all these reasons, Bill H.R. 40 is a moral and political mistake. Thank you.
I feel a sense of anger where we are in the United States of America, where we have not had direct conversations all about a lot of the root causes of the inequities and the pain and the hurt manifested in economic disparities, manifested in health disparities, manifested in a criminal justice system that is indeed a form of new Jim Crow. And so we as a nation have not yet truly acknowledged and grappled with racism and white supremacy that has tainted this country's founding and continues to persist in those deep racial disparities and inequalities today.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Now, that was a year ago. And today there was something else that was very, I said, land-breaking for us here. Juneteenth should be a holiday. And today on the House floor, there was bipartisan support of introducing June 19th as actual holiday, a national holiday for us. So let's hope we get there. And so, Brother Salim, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I want you to talk a little bit about not only what happened last year and what's so important about today, but also what are some of the reasons that we were brought here to America in the beginning, and then talk about the chattel slavery that we had to go through, and what was that like? And we're going to have some slides also during this presentation, and I do want to tell parents and individuals who are watching the show, if you have children, we will have some graphic material and graphic photos. In this set of slides, we don't, but we will have some graphic material. So if you do have a small child and you're worried about them seeing something graphic, you might not want to, watch portions of our slide presentation. So I'm turning it over to Minister Salim.
I want to clear up, if I can, a couple of issues that have gone unnoticed. Let's start with the beginning of the Atlantic slave trade. When Christopher Columbus came this way, headed toward the east, he encountered some indigenous people, and he considered them to be less than strong enough, less than huge enough, broad enough to do the kind of work that they had in their minds that they wanted done by a people that were already here, the Taino Indians.
And Brother Salim, I don't mean to interrupt you, but if we could get slide 1 up, please, and get some of the slides up, and for Brother Salim, because and if we could share the slide with his as he's talking. And can we get slide 1 up, please?
So they ended up killing most of the Taino Indians. And they needed someone to harvest, grow, produce the objects that were being utilized in Europe and in the other parts of the Middle East. Among those were tobacco, sugarcane, cotton. They found that we were strong enough that we could take the heat, that we could withstand the rigors of working from sunup to sundown. And so they decided they were going to bring us here. Throughout the slavery diaspora, South and Central America, Jamaica, Bahamas, Cuba, all of these areas. And in bringing us here, they brought us here before 1619. This is one of the things I want to try and clear up. The first ones were not made into slaves as the others were made into slaves, because slavery is one form of working for nothing. And our slavery had more to do with the wiping away and the cleansing of our minds and of our memories, to the point where we don't remember who we are. We lost our identity. They took our identity, our mother tongue, they took our language, they took our religion, and they took our culture. The first ones were brought here aboard a ship called Jesus. And this ship was piloted or captained by Sir Francis Drake and his cousin, John Hawkins. Now, they say that John Hawkins brought us here. I remember that from the 4th grade. But I did a little research. John Hawkins died in 1595. So either we were here before 1619, or somebody is lying about John Hawkins bringing us here. So either way it goes, we have been here now 400 years, and we need to be released from the rigors and the stigma of slavery. We have been here under the yoke, literally under the yoke, with a knee on our neck, a rope around our neck, someone choking us. We are in a position where we have to be free to determine our own destiny. And that's part of what this reparations is all about. The first thing we had to do was get an identity. Mr. Muhammad filed a petition in the United Nations for reparations in March of 1994. But little did he know, when he filed a petition, they had no record of us. We were included among the people who had enslaved us, and they never heard from us. They never knew that we had any problems. We were even classified as white people. So Mr. Muhammad realized that in order to get our petition heard and be considered by the UN, we needed an identity, because they didn't know where we fit. What group do you fit with? And throughout the slavery diaspora, there are like 250 million of us who are like this. But most of us exist here in the United States because our slavery was different from most people's slavery and colonization efforts that took place in the other parts of the diaspora. The white man here in America, they completely took our identity. So the point now is we have to have an identity. In the UN, there are two groups that are considered in the UN from Africa. One group is the peoples of African descent. The other group are Afro descendants. We purport Afro descendants because peoples of African descent are people who came to America or other countries on their own, because that's what they wanted to do. They were immigrants, like Ben Carson said, they were immigrants, but we weren't immigrants. Our ancestors were not immigrants. They were brought here in the hulls of ships. And what we experienced is now a part of our DNA. It's a part of who we are. It happened in chronological order maybe 150 years ago. But for me, it's yesterday. It's today. So we are continuing with this same image, the same things that happened to our ancestors are more modern today. They call it a high-tech lynching. We have a definition for who we are, and they are Afro descendants.
Yeah, oh, I don't mean to cut you off there, Minister Salima. I want to thank you for that. we're gonna, because I want to remind people that you can call in. The studio, the number to the studio is on the screen, so you can call in. So if you do have a question, you can call in, and we'll be taking calls live, questions from the audience, in a few. But I want Brother Salim, can you wrap up, and then we're going to show another video before our next guest comes on.
Very good. Afro descendants were forcibly dispossessed of their homeland, Africa. They were transported to the Americas and the diaspora for the purpose of enslavement, and were subject to slavery, were subjected to forced mixed breeding and rape, have experienced through force the loss of mother tongue, culture, and religion, and have experienced racial discrimination due to the partially lost ties to our original identity. Today, we are Afro descendants.
And I want to thank you so much for that definition, because people get confused. Now, I really like the way you said that, because even myself, always says, I'm an African, I'm an African descendant, but I'm an Afro descendant because I was forcibly brought here. So my ancestors were forcibly brought here, and people from African descent, they do come here on their free will. And I'm very glad you have kind of given that definition. And I think that I'm hoping our audience also sees what the difference is at this time. Before I go on, we're going to start with our next video, because we have our wonderful next guest who will be coming live to you as well. As I said, Miss Kimberly Jones, who is an amazing, amazing, amazing young lady. I got a chance to see this video that you're getting ready to see. She's from Atlanta. She's an author, director, and screenwriter. Can we show the video now of Kimberly Jones, please, so that we can get an understanding of where we are now, and then talk a little about the Jim Crow South and what it did to us as well.
So I've been seeing a lot of things talking of the people making commentary. Interestingly enough, the ones I've noticed that have been making the commentary are wealthy black people making the commentary about we should not be rioting, we should not be looting, we should not be tearing up our own communities. And then there's been an argument of the other side of we should be hitting them in the pocket. We should be focusing on the blackout days where we don't spend money. But I feel like we should do both. And I feel like I support both. And I'll tell you why I support both. I support both because when you have a civil unrest like this, there are three types of people in the streets. There are the protesters, there are the rioters, and there are the looters. The protesters are there because they actually care about what is happening in the community. They want to raise their voices, and they are there strictly to protest. You have the rioters who are angry, who are anarchists, who really just want to shit up, and that's what they're going to do regardless. And then you have the looters. And the looters almost exclusively are just there to do that, to loot. Now, people are like, well, what did you gain? Well, what did you get from looting? I think that as long as we're focusing on the what, we're not focusing on the why, and that's my issue with that. As long as we're focusing on what they're doing, we're not focusing on why they're doing. And some people are like, well, those aren't people who are legitimately angry about what's happening. Those are people who just want to get stuff. Okay, well then, let's go with that. Let's say that's what it is. Let's ask ourselves why in this country in 2020, the financial gap between poor blacks and the rest of the world is at such a distance that people feel like their only hope and only opportunity to get some of the things that we flaunt and flash in front of them all the time is to walk through a broken glass window and get it. That they are so hopeless that getting that necklace, getting that TV, getting that change, getting that bed, getting that phone, whatever it is that they're going to get, is that in that moment when the riots happen and if they present an opportunity of looting, that's their only opportunity to get it. We need to be questioning that why. Why are people that poor? Why are people that broke? Why are people that food insecure, that clothing insecure, that they feel like their only shot, that they are shooting their shot by walking through a broken glass window to get what they need. And then people want to talk about, well, there's plenty of people who pulled themselves up by their bootstraps and got it on their own. Why can't they do that? Let me explain to you something about economics in America. And I'm so glad that as a child, I got an opportunity to spend time at Push where they taught me this, is that we must never forget that economics was the reason that black people were brought to this country. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Do you understand that? That's what we came to do. We came to do the agricultural work in the South and the textile work in the North. Now, if I right now decided that I wanted to play Monopoly with you, and for 400 rounds of playing Monopoly, I didn't allow you to have any money, I didn't allow you to have anything on the board, I didn't allow for you to have anything. And then we played another 50 rounds of Monopoly, and everything that you gained and you earned while you were playing that round of Monopoly was taken from you. That was Tulsa, that was Rosewood. Those are places where we built black economic wealth, where we were self-sufficient, where we owned our stores, where we owned our property, and they burned them to the ground. So that's 450 years. So for 400 rounds of Monopoly, you don't get to play at all. Not only do you not get to play, you have to play on the behalf of the person that you're playing against. You have to play and make money and earn wealth for them, and then you have to turn it over to them. So then for 50 years, you finally get a little bit and you're allowed to play. And every time that they don't like the way that you're playing, or that you're catching up, or that you're doing something to be self-sufficient, they burn your game. They burn your cards. They burn your Monopoly money. And then finally at the release and the onset of that, they allow you to play and they say, okay, now you catch up. Now at this point, the only way you're going to catch up in the game is if the person shares the wealth, correct? But what if every time you share the wealth, then there's psychological warfare against you to say, oh, you're an equal opportunity hire. So if I played 400 rounds of Monopoly with you and I had to play and give you every dime that I made, and then for 50 years, every time that I played, if you didn't like what I did, you got to burn it like they did in Tulsa and like they did in Rosewood, how can you win? How can you win? You can't win. The game is fixed. So when they say, why do you burn down the community? Why do you burn down your own neighborhood? It's not ours. We don't own anything. We don't own anything. Trevor Noah said it so beautifully last night. There's a social contract that we all have, that if you steal or if I steal, then the person who is the authority comes in and they fix the situation. But the person who fixes the situation is killing us. So the social contract is broken. And if the social contract is broken, why the f do I give a shit about burning the Football Hall of Fame, about burning a Target? You broke the contract when you killed us in the streets and didn't give a f. You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract, so your Target, your Hall of Fame. As far as I'm concerned, they could burn this bitch to the ground. And it still wouldn't be enough. And they are lucky that what black people are looking for is equality and not revenge.
So you've heard it and you've been able to see it. I tell you, and I am so happy that we were able to get Miss Kimberly Jones on the line today. Now I hear music playing. I'm not sure if they can hear me. Wonderful. I want to thank you so much. You've got to see what made me go all out of the way and try to find Kimberly. And I want to thank our co-hosts here who just are an invisible man who was able to reach out and find a number. And I says, but I want to thank Kimberly Jones. And when I saw that video, I shared with everybody on my platform. And I'm going to tell you, it made me cry. It made me realize just how downtrodden they have made us, and we've become accustomed to it. We just keep going like robots, like this is how it's supposed to be. This is not how it's supposed to be. So without further ado, we have Miss Kimberly Jones on with us. Kimberly Jones, thank you. You can introduce yourself, and please tell us, Kimberly, a little bit about why and how you brought that video to be, and talk about the natural evolution about enslavement, and give us a little bit of your background on that.
So, I'm the baby of 7 kids. And so, to keep us in check, my mom and dad, they kept us in every bit of programming they could find for us, because it's a lot to manage 4 boys and 3 girls. And so one of the things they did, I live in Atlanta now, but I grew up in Chicago. And so my mother and father put me in after school program at Operation Push Rainbow Coalition. And then they also,
side, right?
Yep, it sure is.
I'm from Chicago.
Oh, look it out. Yep, I'm from 107th and Wallace.
West side.
Yep, and I have family on the west side too. My family is on Pulaski. Yep. So
come on.
Yeah, so I went to after school programs at Push, at the ETA, and at the DuSable Museum. That's where I spent my afternoons from the time I was about 10 years old all the way up until all the way up through high school till I went off to college. And so that's one of the things that I learned when I was at Push. Reverend Willie T. Barrow, she's since passed on, but I'm grateful for the time I got to spend with her, because that's what she taught in the Black community was economics and the effect that that slavery and Jim Crow had on economics. And so she was teaching that to me when I was 10 years old. So she planted that seed in me. I remember a speech that she gave, and she talked about how we came to do the agricultural work in the South, and eventually over time, the textile work in the North. And that's why I say you should plant stuff in kids, because you don't know the effect it's having on them, because I always carried that with me. And so what happened that day was that my friend, I'm a filmmaker by trade, and I was out with another filmmaker who was shooting a documentary about the unrest, and he had asked me to come do some like man on the street interviews for him. And a few months prior to that, I live in Bankhead, and I never see street sweepers or anything in my community. So I had scheduled a community cleanup, and I got in the city to bring out a dumpster, and I got some nonprofit organizations to donate brooms and bags and things like that. And I had 4 people show up for this community cleanup. And so we were only able to clean like 2 or 3 streets. So you fast forward a few months, I'm out here. That day, earlier that day, people were out cleaning up. And then later that day, David and I were in the middle of a protest, and we filmed it for the documentary. But earlier that day, when that video was filmed, there were all these Black people downtown Atlanta cleaning up. They had spent their own money. They had bought things to get the graffiti off the wall. They had bought trash bags and all of this stuff. And they were all out there cleaning up in a community where we don't own anything. And it really struck me hard to my core, because I was just like, I scheduled a community cleanup in our hood, and nobody showed up to help me get the trash off the streets, to help me pick up the mattresses and stuff that are on the side of the road, to help me like clean up our community. Nobody showed up. But y'all down here in droves, spending your own money to clean up property we don't own. And to me, it was because of the white gaze. They were concerned about how the unrest were looking to white people. And I'm like, since when have you had to buck your oppressor in a way that's palatable to them? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, excuse me, sir, I know you're oppressing me, but I just want to make sure that I'm fighting against your oppression in a way that makes you happy. I don't want you to be upset and see me in a certain light. So I'm going to come down here and clean up so that you know that, I'm not really that bad. Some of us are really bad. In my head, that was the narrative that was playing in my head. And I was super upset. And also that they were redirecting the narrative to the looters and the rioters. And I'm like, and it's not even that I'm telling people to loot and riot, but what I'm saying is, if you're not dealing with the why people are upset, we'll be back here again. We were here in the 60s. We were here with Rodney King. We were here with Ferguson. Now we're back here again. And nobody's understanding the why, and nobody's understanding the economic impact that leads into the why. And so I started talking about it. And David was like, "Hey, on sis, let me grab my camera," and started recording me, and that's where that video came from.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, that video is powerful. And everyone I shared it for, they said it was powerful because unfortunately they have been spinning, the media spins things the way they want to spin things. And our media here they have spinned the story about looters. And I think it's an opportunity. A lot of this looting has not been, it's been, I say it's been promoted by them.
Right.
And like you said, we learn to loot from them. And I was just so excited when I saw the video, and I said, I've watched it multiple times since then because it really hits home. And I take pieces out and tell them, I love the way you break it down to playing Monopoly, because everyone has played Monopoly. Most of our kids have played Monopoly, so they know if you have no money, you go lose. How could you ever win? And I love the name. How can we win? And the only way we can win is through economic empowerment. And
Period.
and period. And Brother Slim, when I say about that, what are some of the ways you think we can win also? Because I know economic empowerment, and I know there's other ways that you've talked about how we can win as people of color, Black folks, African descendants, African Americans, Africans.
Reparations is the key to us getting where we're trying to go.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we're in the election season, but let me show you how legislation goes so that you can get a feel for how they do stuff. On Juneteenth, emancipation was the impetus for the 13th Amendment. So technically, people were supposed to be made free. No more slavery, no more lack of liberties. We're going to be able to move around and do things we want to do. We have freedom. The 13th Amendment basically says slavery is abolished in the United States and all of its territories, except as a punishment for a person who has committed a crime. Then, therefore, slavery will be legal and binding. Emancipation comes from a Latin word that says emancipare, and it means to transfer ownership. So when they wrote the 13th Amendment, they took slavery out of the hands of the private owner and put it into the hands of the state, so that today we can be enslaved by being picked up for vagrancy. That's how it was right after the 13th Amendment came into play. They locked you up because you didn't have a job. If you wanted a job, nobody's hiring you. What are you going to do? You're going to go back to the plantation, and it started sharecropping. So these are ways in which they manipulate the law to their benefit. Here we are asking for equal treatment, equal justice. And how do they interpret that? We want to get rid of the police. That ain't what nobody said, that they wanted to get rid of the police. Somebody introduced that idea that wanted to make the movement seem like it was an anarchist type movement. The movement started peacefully. And then they showed film of police officers burning their own cars. They showed pictures and video of police officers breaking the windows. They didn't capture that in the media. We got that only because of social media. Otherwise, we would not know this.
Mm-hmm.
So here we are today trying to become entrepreneurs, trying to become inventors and creators of our own destiny. And like Sister said with the Monopoly game, 400 years we didn't get anything. And for 50 years, look what happened. They took everything. How many Black farmers are there today? We have to depend on the grocery stores that the industrial type farmers utilize to supply food for ourselves. And what kind of food do they provide? Food that's not food. When was the last time you seen a worm in an apple? When was the last time you seen a worm eat a pear? Because it's not good enough to eat. That's why you don't see them. You think it's insecticides. No, it's not the insecticides. Insecticides are designed to kill things on the leaves, not the fruit. So the economics has to start with us as a people. Food, clothing, shelter, the very basics of life. We have to put ourselves in a position where we can at least provide those things. And that means that we got to have some land. How are we going to get the land? We need reparations.
Yes.
To get land that we can call our own. Because if they decide in this country that they want to take a piece of land, they got a thing in the law called eminent domain. They can take it for whatever reason and whatever purpose they choose. And ain't nothing you can do about it. So we must have a land that we can call our own. So what does reparations look like? It looks like machinery for building roads, machinery for doing infrastructure, machinery for making clothes, airplanes, boats. It looks like what America looks like. That's what reparations look like. It looks like what the Jews got for reparations. That's what it looks like.
And Ms. Jones, do you want to chime in on that? Because what does reparations look like? Because we do need reparations.
Oh, we definitely need reparations. And my issue with the conversation about reparations is some of us that acts like the conversation is taboo, which I cannot wrap my head around. When at the end of the day, we have suffered more atrocities than any of the other nations that receive reparations, than the Japanese, than the natives, than the Jewish people. 400 years. 400 years of oppression and 400 years. I mean, I've started working on a documentary about other instances similar to Tulsa, right? And so people think it's just Tulsa, it's just Rosewood. I found over 30 different similar instances like those in spaces where we have built our own wealth and they came and slaughtered it. A lot of people don't even know that Central Park used to be an all-Black community called Seneca Village. And that's why I found it interesting that the brother said about eminent domain. They took Central Park from Black people, which was called Seneca Village, through eminent domain, and that's how they built Central Park. And it's interesting to me that that's the place where something as horrific as the Central Park 5 happened, when that actually used to be Black-owned land. We're not even going to talk about the fact that we used to have, Amelia's Island and all of that. We owned all of that. That was all given to us. And then it was taken away again right after Reconstruction. So they have not allowed us to, it's not even that, we haven't done what we needed to do. We were enslaved. And they continue to enslave us with the 13th Amendment, not allowing us to build wealth or buy anything. And if people don't want to believe that, what they have to look at is the generational wealth that was built and still functions from slavery time. A lot of people don't even know that Brooks Brothers suits made all of their initial money because they had a niche market of dressing slaves. So all of the coachmen, the footmen, the housemen who wore tuxedos and things like that to serve white people as slaves, they were all dressed by Brooks Brothers. That's where they made their original money. So if you have a descendant of the Brooks Brothers still sitting on the board or still receiving money, they're still receiving slave money. They still have generational wealth from slave money. So then you have to be honest about the fact that we have a generational debt from not being allowed to make money. And it goes deeper than just the actual physical money of it. We for generations were not allowed to pass down financial education. And in order to have financial education, you have to have some finances in which you're working with to gain that education. We can talk about Freedmen's Bank, which was the only place where Black people were allowed to put their money. And then they stole $50 million, which is probably several billion dollars now, from all of the people who have money in Freedmen's Bank. And that's what they built the railroads with which was another way in which they generated wealth. And then they called eminent domain on a bunch of black land and black farmers to build the railroad that they were building with the money that they had stolen from black people in Freedmen's Bank. I mean, it's never ending. It's never ending. That conquering spirit that has destroyed our community and has destroyed our opportunities to build economic wealth, and it still happens. I watch it all the time happen here, where they sit in black communities and they write unnecessary tickets when they know these people are already marginalized, and write $1,500 and $2,000 tickets that they know people can't pay. Then they put you on probation where you have interest on it and you're paying it for 2 years. And when you're done with it, that $1,500 ticket, you've now given the city $3,000 when you're done. They continue to rape us of the opportunity to gain economic wealth. So I think at the end of the day, the only way, and first of all, the playing field is never, that's why I said in that video, they could burn it to the ground and it still would never be enough, because the atrocities of 500 years is too severe for us to even get revenge if we wanted it. We'd have to burn the whole world down to get revenge for what they've done for us. And since they should be grateful that we are such a forgiving and kind people, because there's nobody more gracious than black people in the face of all of the atrocities that we have suffered. And I think that we have to get reparations, but also we have to begin to get serious about circulating the black dollar in our community and make sure that we are spending money with black businesses and that we are giving black businesses the same grace that we give everybody else. You go to McDonald's 60 times and the ice cream machine is down and you still pull up in that driveway. If you go to a black business and they don't have cups that time, then you bad mouthing them and you're never going to return again. We have to start giving grace to each other. We have to start advising each other. We have to start spending, because we're not getting the business loans that everybody else is getting. With that, they still hold us back from the banking system. So most people are starting business, are starting it out of their savings and doing the best they can with what they have. So we have to be more gracious with each other. We have to circulate the black dollar amongst each other, but we have to come up with a real good commission and plan to receive reparations from our people, because it's not something that they are giving us. It's not us asking for advancement. It's something they owe us.
And, you know, and I says, let me tell you, I got a history lesson right now, but we have a caller on the line. We have a caller who wants to ask a question. Is the caller there?
You can talk now.
And when you come up, could you please say your name, your area, ask your question.
Say your name and ask your question.
Sure. My name is Tammy Hogan. I'm an archaeologist. Yes. Are you there? Can you hear me? Hello?
Turn your volume down.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you, but turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, we can hear
I
you.
think maybe there's some connectivity issue.
No, we hear you. Can you hear us?
Okay. My name is Tammy Hogan. I cannot hear them. I muted it. My question is, you know, in terms of the progression of land loss, yes, I'm interested in how reparations would work in terms of sexual and systemic racism in land practices and the progression of land loss, how African Americans were quote unquote emancipated. They went into places where they thought they were going to be free to be property owners and to economically prosper. Then that land was just systematically taken away from them through abusive realty practices, and people Africans were systematically kind of pushed into public housing projects, which were basically reservations, much like what happened to American Indians. So I'm interested in what the vision for remedy is for the loss of land and this loss of economic to the deprivation of the privilege of being a landowner in the United States as Africans who were quote unquote emancipated after the Civil War. And so, I'm interested in this and what reparations look like for this kind of systemic deprivation of property. And that's my question. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for the question too. So, who would like to take a stab at that question?
I got it. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Go back to 1868, and a week after the assassination of President Lincoln, that's when Andrew Johnson was sworn in. And he began to take away, just like Obama, what he tried to do, Trump is taking away. So Johnson did the same thing 100 and some years ago. When we were talking about the vagrancy, my grandfather, he was born in 1899, and he talked about you couldn't leave the house without having some money in your pocket. And there's a great book called Slavery by Another Name, the Black Code. You could be picked up and, just work for free. Now, as far as the land go, America is for Americans. They took it from the Indians, and they're not going to give you any. So I'd like to throw it to the Minister Salim and ask him, what is the real goal of the Afro-descendant nation?
The goal of the Afro-descendant nation is to leave America, exodus out of America to a land that we can call our own. Because, as you just mentioned, they're not going to give us the land, even if they did. It's like the sister say about the Monopoly game. We're going to be right back here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years, but we're going to visit this again. All they're trying to do right now is buy themselves some time. That's all the 1965 Voting Rights Act did, was bought some time. They buying time. If they can buy 20 years, they can get this past the mind of our young people. Unfortunately for them, they are doing it at a time when our young people don't have the same thing in us than them that we had in us, which was forgiveness. Our young people don't have forgiveness like that.
Yeah.
Be my brother, be in love with me, and I'm be in love with you, regardless of the circumstances. Unconditional love. That ain't where our young people are coming from.
All right, so we have another caller on the line. So let's take another call, and then I want Ms. Jones to also weigh in. We have another caller on the line. Can you please say your name, where you're calling from? You can say your first name and what area you're calling from. Caller. Okay, while they get the next caller on the line. Oh, are you there?
Hi, my name is Alex Swan, and I am from Silver Spring, Maryland. I'm a junior at Spelman College, and I was wondering what you think the role of young people is in this movement for reparations.
And let's have our young lady take that. She's one of the youngest ones on the call there. So, Ms. Jones.
I think it's definitely up to our generation to do the legwork. If you look at all of the historical movements that have happened throughout all of life, they've always been led by the energy of young people. I think the smartest thing for us to do right now is to take up arms in the sense of leading the community, but also to be having intergenerational conversations where we're looking at the work of people like Dr. Anderson and Minister Salim, the information that they've already put together, the plans that they've already put together, and for us to start doing the legwork. It's time that we formate an army and give the leaders, they've done the work. They've been doing the work for years, trying to figure out how we can actually make these systems work and what the next steps are, but it's up to us to pick up the baton and then start doing the legwork. We need to start running for office. It doesn't cost that much money to run for city council. It doesn't cost that much money to run for an alderman. I ran a very successful campaign for one of my candidates a few years ago. Our entire budget was $10,000. We came in second place, right closely behind the incumbent, and everybody who ran against us had more money than we did. But we use grassroots. We use social media, which other people were not using because we ran a younger race, and we utilize social media for our campaign. We utilize celebrities and gathering in the area that we knew for our campaign. But I think at the end of the day, I agree with with Minister Salim that what we really should be looking at, a lot of times who we want to look at what happened with the Japanese, and we want to look at what happened with Jewish people in order to set up what our reparations should look like. But we should really be looking at a more sophisticated plan of what happened with the Native American, because at the end of the day, they have their own commissions, they run their own land, and that's not to say that there aren't some problems there, but they are separate. They don't pay taxes on this land, all of that. And that's the only way we're going to be safe and be protected and actually get that done. And I do agree with Minister Salim that, like, our generation is not interested in kumbaya with them, because we've seen what they've done generation after generation after generation. And they've already proven to not give any care or concern about our lives. And a lot of times when people are saying Black Lives Matter, I want people to understand that these movements are not really talking about Black Lives Matter. What we're getting excited, what we are getting riled up about is that Black deaths matter. These movements are centered around the Black deaths that are occurring. Because if you worry about Black lives, then you're trying to make sure I'm not food insecure, that I'm not clothing insecure, that I have a place to live, that our children are getting a proper education and they're not in schools with asbestos. So all I'm going to say is they've already proven they don't care about us. So I'm not looking for that narrative to change. I don't, and when I'm around other people my age, they ain't expecting that to change. At this point in the game, the reparations also has to have a component of separation.
Where did the breakfast program for the kids come from?
The Panthers.
All right, now.
From us.
So you got to do it yourself. And the next question is, do you really think your vote make a difference?
No, because I know my vote don't make a difference, because I'm currently suing Governor Kemp because I found out that my vote didn't count for Stacey Abrams. So it's 10,000 of us suing him right now in a class action lawsuit.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, that is unfortunate. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, though, because we want to get some more topics in. We want to talk about Jim Crow. Ooh. Now, there's going to be some graphic pictures here, so I want to let people know. If you have children, there will be a few graphic pictures. But we want to talk about Jim Crow and the next period. And then, a little bit more about segregation versus integration. So we're going to have a next set of slides here. And I want to, if you can put the first slide up, put the first slide up for Jim Crow. And let's talk a little about Jim Crow. They're going to run some slides while we're talking about this. So can we start off with Brother Salim? Mr. Salim, could you tell us a little bit about Jim Crow and how that has impacted us here in the United States?
Jim Crow basically said that separate was equal, so that a facility for Black people and a facility for white people could be separated, but separate only meant that the accommodations were going to be worse, almost untenable for you to utilize. I remember growing up as a child, having to go around the backside of the bus station in order to catch the bus. And there was the outhouse there for the bathroom. There were no bathrooms on the inside of the building for us to even utilize. And I did pick cotton. I know what it's like to pick cotton. Everything kind of rolled over into everything else. The Black codes, then Jim Crow, then right into segregation, right into lynchings. All of those things just kind of rolled over into one another. It wasn't like there was an era, ERA, for this, there was an era for something else. It kind of all just merged together. And they were utilizing different methods to suppress Black people's advancements. Wherever they saw us making any kind of advancement, their goal was to stop it, or at least slow it down to the point where white people always were in a superior position. Recently, there was this incident where people were trying to get into a certain environment, living conditions, and try to get into better housing. Well, what do? They take and raise the rents on the properties. They use gerrymandering and gentrification processes in order to prevent people from getting better living conditions. And that's not just in Atlanta, it's all over the country. It how does it happen that a New York developer finds a need to come down to Atlanta to develop the areas in which we live and raise the rents up 3 times more than they were before they came in? It's a diabolical scheme, plot, and a plan of theirs to do these kinds of things. In Jim Crow segregation, we had our own. We had our own doctors. We had our own stores. We had our own farms. We had our own schools. Segregation for us was freedom, in a sense. Integration made us tools. Integration put us in a position where we could be misused because we thought in our mindset that things were getting better, that just because we could sit at the same lunch counter or sit on the same toilet stool or eat or sleep in the same bed that white people had, then it was better because we were allowed to do that. It was a mind trick. It was, yeah, it was yeah, you know what I'm talking about. We got mind, yeah, that's what happened. So we have to depend on our own sense of right and wrong. What's right for us, not what right for the slave master or the former slave master and his children, but what's right for us. We have to become selfish to that degree. I'm not worried about anybody else getting anything, whether they whatever they are, whatever their politics is. I'm not worried about that. I'm only concerned with my people. That's what I'm concerned about. That's where all my energy goes. I don't have any energy for trying to pull down any statues. I don't give a damn about them statues. You can pull them down if you choose.
Miss Jones.
Yes.
How you feel about integration?
I feel like that was the worst thing that happened to us. Because I think I think at the end of the day, what we were doing was building together and circulating the black dollar and working amongst each other. And a lot of times what people forget is beyond like the 30 cities that I named where there were atrocities that like they burned us down like Tulsa and Rosewood and what happened in Nova Scotia and how they killed all the sharecroppers and the 856 sharecroppers in Florida and all those different instances. A lot of times the men that you saw that were lynched, that were being hung from trees, those were for the most part leaders in the community, people that they felt were getting too powerful or too beside themselves or had the voice, had the ear of black people too much. And so that continued to be some of the things they did to break down wealth. But I said that to say that in those communities, those were people who were shop owners, who owned the churches, and many people owned their own homes. And so part of what happened with us, the integration and trying to assimilate into their communities, we released ownership. We released the ownership of our homes, of our businesses, of our schoolhouses. We released ownership in order to integrate. And so in the end, we ended up giving up almost everything that we had pulled together and letting it go. And without that sense of community, it was so much easier to like ravage us, and we left the poor to get poor, and the middle class continued to focus their energy on trying to assimilate, and they left their brothers and sisters behind. And so now you have some people who are doing, what they think is great, but when you think of the amount of wealth that has been compiled by white people, by white Americans, as much as well as they think they're doing, they're not even in the wheelhouse of wealth of the descendants of their slave masters' children. And then we left the poor completely poor, uneducated, and without health care.
I said that was a strong answer.
Yeah.
Butler?
Well, no, I was going to say, I said, I'm just I'm just taken back at the history and the knowledge that I'm getting tonight has been remarkable. And Ms. Jones, when you pull all that together, please let us know how we can share that out, because you know our history is not written. Our stories, and I always tell people, history to me is his story. It's
Yeah.
not our story. So we have to tell our stories so that our children and our future generation and those around us will know our stories. And it's not just for black folks, it's for everyone. Because it's just like we came here, we were, boom, we came here as slaves. People don't realize we came here as African kings and queens. And they stripped us of everything.
And some of
Every
us were
single
already
thing.
here. Some of us
Oh,
were already
yes.
here.
And well, but oh, they disregard the ones that were here because they are talking about 1619.
Hmm.
Black folks been in this country in the 1500s. They have documentation from 1509. The first discoverers were the Moors, and so we built ships before anybody did. So we were the first world travelers, and it's just, it's just interesting how we look, when we have these discussions and nothing gets written. So please let us know how we can help you, when you're going to get something. I know you've written a book. Can you talk a little bit about the book that you've written as well?
So my book is called "I'm Not Dying with You Tonight," and it is the story of two 17-year-old girls who survived the night in race riots in Atlanta. It almost feels like prophecy now because I started writing it in 2015 and I sold it in 2017 and it was released in 2019. But it is the story of race riots happening in Atlanta, and eerily, there's a lot of similarities about what has happened here in the last couple months in the book. And it is, I made it so that there are two girls, one black and one white, who are surviving the night, and it's told in alternating chapters, and you can see how differently the girls see the same night, like how differently the black girl sees the night than how differently the white girl sees the night. And the only similarities that they share over the course of the night is their femininity, because there's an omnipresent threat to the feminine form. And so that's what connected them and made them feel as if though they would be stronger surviving the night together, is because they're both female. But there's a lot of nuance in how they're seeing the situation, because one is black and one is white. And so it's called "I'm Not Dying with You Tonight." But I also just want to, in terms of talking about the history, I work very closely with my dear friend Eric Majette, who Dick Gregory calls him the keeper of the jewels. Dick Gregory gave him that nickname before he died, and he's a good friend of mine, and I've been helping him organize some things. He has a traveling African American history museum, and so he curates exhibits based on whatever your event is. So if you're doing a book event, he'll bring curated things. He does like the Bonner Brothers hair show, and he brings all of his Madam C.J. Walker and stuff. But this brother, and he's around my age, he's in his 30s, and he has spent his life savings and every extra dime he ever made buying back our history from white collectors. And now he has over 10,000 pieces in his collection. He has everything from from Angela Davis's original FBI wanted poster to Martin Luther King's Bible to Marcus Garvey's plate that he used when he traveled on the ship. And so he and I are also working on some projects to be able to digitize all of the pieces that he has and get better like safety measures to keep the pieces in place. And so we'll be rolling out ways to share that. That's part of why we want to get all the pieces digitized so we can give them all up on the website and people can see all of them. But I think there is a roar. Steve Harvey called me the other day, and he calls me the young lion, because he said there's a roar that's happening with the younger generation, where we've seen the struggle not only from our own perspective, but what we saw with our parents and our grandparents, and I think this is the warrior generation. I think again we do need to have more intergenerational conversations, because I think we could learn a lot from the wisdom of the elders that have come before us. But yeah, I think we're ready to bulldoze over on these people. Tired.
All
Oh,
right.
so we need more blood, more blood like you. And and just a little bit about me. I work with young people, and let me tell you, that's what keeps me going. Literally, is their energy, their thirst for their thirst for knowledge and the momentum of moving things forward. So, Brother Minister Salim, could you tell us? Because we want to see what steps can we take, how can we move forward, and how can we get our reparations? Because I'm so tired of talking about it. I am so tired of talking about reparations. We got to get our reparations.
We talked briefly about it once before. We have to have a constitution, something that we all can agree upon, or the majority of us can agree upon that we're willing to follow. Then we have to have an umbrella brought up over us so that we can maintain our individual identity until we get a national identity. Our global identity is Afro descendant, and if you will self-determine that that's who you are, then we can band together as a whole group, as a whole nation, because reparation is not paid to individuals. And I don't want people to get the idea that there's going to be individual checks and everything for reparations. Reparations is paid from one nation to another nation. That's how it's done, and it's always been done that way. You might want to call getting better policing, getting better schools. You might want to call that reparations, but I would like to warn you against making that kind of determination or using that word for the purpose of trying to get more education, more health care. Those are civil, social things that a nation or government ought to be providing anyway. It don't need to be made a part of reparations. That's something that they ought to be doing anyway, legally, under their civil rights. But we're talking about human rights now, and that has to be dealt with in the international arena. We need to be getting ready to go before the UN Security Council. That's our next move. We got to be able to present ourselves in a nationalistic form and have an identity that we pretty much all will agree upon. At least we can that they can talk to us and we'll all be on the same page. Afro descendant is that platform. And if you are Methodist, Catholic, Buddhist, Muslim, it don't matter what your religion is. And it's the same way, it doesn't matter what your individual preferences are. If we all can come under this one umbrella, Afro descendant, we have the power then to make a demand before the world in the world court. Just 2 days ago, the chief of the Human Rights Council said again, the countries that enslaved us ought to be paying us reparations. This time for us to make the move and make the demand. But we can't really make the demand as one or two people, a separate group. We got to be one group making the demand for reparations. Maybe everybody don't want to leave, but those of us who want to leave, we want reparations. And reparations, as I said, looks like what we need to build a government, a country of our own. That's what it looks like.
Something like what they did with Liberia when we had the exodus of Africans and blacks back, and when they built Liberia. So that is something that is definitely doable and can happen. So Ms. Jones, could you weigh in on that?
I mean, I don't feel like it's nothing for me to add to that.
Because one of the big things I'm concerned about is how can we come together? Because we as black folks, we as Afro descendants, we as people of color with the most beautiful pigmentation going in the world, and from all these various different color and variations of us, we are the most divided people there are in the world. How can we start moving forward unified as one and come under one group, and the majority of us, and really push the envelope?
Can I answer that? Just like there was a constitutional convention, we need to have delegates from the different, groups of us sit down and work it out. If it takes 6 months to come together, that's what we have to do.
Well, this is the time to do it, because we have momentum, and we got to get young people at the table, because those of us who are older, we have to, we're going to have to give the wisdom of our generations what has happened and the fights that we've been in. But then the young people are the ones who really make change. And I'll just briefly say when I was younger, I had the opportunity of supporting the Free Mandela movement and actually being one of the student organizers at UC Berkeley. Now that was years and years ago, but I'm like, we're still fighting. We're still fighting from the same fights. And so many of my uncles and aunts thought I was a fool, wouldn't even come out to support it. Like, what are you doing fighting for someone who doesn't care about you? But it's like, if that can happen there, it can happen here. And that was my take on that. So how do we get our young and our old and our intergenerational to work together? Because there has not been too many movements where we have intergenerational work together. And then just in general, we are so divided. And I know we can, how can we get all the heads out together? And we have about 5 more minutes. And I just want to wrap up some of that. And if you guys could tell me, how do we get there, and where do we start?
I think the communals are going to be the biggest part. Realistically speaking, we're not going to get everybody on board from the onset, right? Because people never want to be on board with something when it's first starting to come together. Then it starts to look good and it starts to look like something's going to happen. And then people start to perk up and show interest. And then once it's gotten to the place where it is happening and people can see the benefit of it, then they'll pretend like they were always on board and come on board. So we just got to set our sights knowing that is what is going to transpire. But I think that it is a good idea to start thinking of ourselves, like you said, in the forms of delegates. We have to start having, and I think we have to start having this conversation not only intergenerationally, but as a diaspora. I've had several conversations just even in the past week with some brothers and sisters in Ghana who had some ideas about how they wanted to work with, people in our country and how they were concerned about us and plans that they had in place and communications that they want to have. I had all of the Black members of parliament in the UK give me a call and said, sis, we're dealing with some of the same things. So we wanted to get on a Zoom with you and start having a conversation about how we can, share resources and exchange resources. So I think that it's going to be a bigger conversation than just the US, because when you're talking about, the slave trade as of itself, then we have to go deal with our brothers down in the islands, and we have to go deal with our brothers, down in Canada and all of that. And so we need to come up with these, if you will, these independent tribal nations that, form one big unit, but have different pieces that are moving and working.
Mr. Muhammad brought together 19 different countries from South Central America, all throughout the diaspora, and that's where the name Afro Descendants came from. So it's being utilized, it's being accepted in the UN. And so nations today have come together to identify as Afro Descendant. All we got to do is just come together under the umbrella. And that's where we can start by, as you say, with the delegates and people coming together, because we have something already written. All you got to do is ratify it or change it or
Brother
amend it.
Salim, you let me know what you need me to do. I'm with you.
Yes. And
you made my day.
yes, and getting that document where we can share it amongst ourselves, so we can, because I think a lot of the legwork has been done, and we need to start sharing documents like Mr. Salim said he has, so that we can start having more collaboration around that and start collecting ourselves, because we have to start. And I always tell people, I love to talk, but I'm action oriented. And so we need to really start. And so, Brother Salim, I'm gonna put it on you to say you need to get information to us ASAP, since I know the nation has been working on this for years, and I've been following a lot of the work that you've been doing, and I'm really excited about it. But I want to have the doctrine so we can start passing that out, start having these groups, start formulating things, and making larger building our delegates up. So that's a call out for you to get the information, especially to Ms. Jones and myself, so we can start. She got those young folks. Those young folks are fired up.
You can look by midweek next week.
Wonderful, wonderful. And so, Kimberly, you heard that. So
I'm hearing it.
We're gonna hold you to that, because I'm excited.
The local scene. What's going on the local scene?
Well, that's going to take us. And so, here's any closing comments before we close up, and then I'll make closing announcements.
No, you make your announcements. Kimberly and I will get together.
Wonderful, wonderful. First of all, I want to thank. Oh my God, I just want to thank my guests tonight. You guys have been amazing. People were texting me and calling me while I was sitting on here, and I'm like, oh, just call in, just call in. I am so excited. I think we have a lot of momentum. We need to start putting this momentum now into action. And I think we're getting there. So I just want to make a few announcements. I want to thank my guest again. I want to thank my co-host, and I definitely want to thank Afrique Today. Thank you so much, Afrique Today. But please, we're starting Justice Mondays, and here in Montgomery County, Maryland, we're starting Justice Mondays. Anyone is welcome from the DC, Prince George's, Virginia, across the state of Maryland. We are starting to rally for the oldest and largest African cemetery in the United States, in Bethesda, Maryland. Our first rally will take place Monday in White Oak at the White Oak McDonald's right there in New Hampshire, where that is the McDonald's that we had a lot of racial incidents, and that's the McDonald's. It's called the most police on black people just for sitting out there eating. And that is the last place where the last area where May 7th, a black man was shot and killed by police. So we want you to come out at 5 o'clock or 7 o'clock for the rally. And that's at the McDonald's. Let me make sure. 5 o'clock for the rally, McDonald's on New Hampshire Boulevard. Please come out and join us. And then we're going to have rallies Monday through Thursday. We're going to try to get them to stop excavating the Moses African Cemetery in Bethesda, Maryland. We need you now.
Time to say goodbye.
Thank you, Dr. Butler. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Have a nice
Can you hear me, Kimberly?
L'entrepreneuriat digital vous intéresse-t-il? Vous voulez apprendre à construire des projets digitaux? Aimeriez-vous gagner des revenus passifs conséquents en tout lieu? Voici la plateforme des professionnels du digital, la Diaspo Academy. Ici, vous retrouverez les meilleurs professionnels de la diasporama mondiale connectés sur notre plateforme. Vous allez pouvoir acquérir des formations adéquates qui feront de vous des entrepreneurs digitaux compétents. Étudiants, entrepreneurs, coachs, instructeurs et entreprises, Diaspo Academy est une opportunité pour vous. Elle vous offre la possibilité de suivre votre formation en mode virtuel à partir de chez vous, où que vous soyez sur la planète. Toutes nos formations disponibles en ligne sont dispensées de manière interactive. Il suffit de vous inscrire et vous pourrez les suivre depuis chez vous. Au cours de la formation, vous passerez des quiz et examens selon votre parcours. En outre, à partir de votre tableau de bord, vous suivrez vos performances et progressions. Vous pourrez aussi communiquer avec vos instructeurs et recevoir des notifications. À la fin de votre parcours de formation, vous recevrez un certificat Diaspo Academy Certified. Que vous soyez débutant ou responsable d'entreprise, Diaspo Academy est une opportunité pour vous. Saisissez-la! Enfin, que vous soyez coach ou instructeur, ayez accès à un millier d'étudiants à travers notre plateforme. Merci de choisir Diaspo Academy, le meilleur choix. Pour plus d'informations, allez sur www.diaspoacademy.com. Diaspo Academy, la plateforme des professionnels du digital.
ESYDA returned to play summer clinics. Recreation, Tuesday and Thursday, 6 to 8 p.m. Travel team, EDP, Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. Time, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Free mask and water bottle. Register today at esyda.org. Email info@esyda. Phone 248-765-9369. Office 301-800-7848. Toll free 800-995-5532. Free registration for all summer clinics. All new players need buy uniforms. We're following COVID-19 soccer guidelines. Small group practice with 9 players and 1 coach. For more information, go to esYDA.org.